All right, so here's the deal. Spider-Man and the Green Goblin are being hunted by Kraven the Hunter, and it's all going down here in the Savage Land in the Ultimate Universe here, which let me tell you is about to get wild. Now, quick refresher here from the last issue. Right after MJ's Christmas party, she discovered that Peter Parker was missing. How? She realized that Peter's suit had been pretending to be him, and to make things worse, Gwen called MJ to say that Harry Osborn was missing too. And at the very end of that issue, we saw Harry and Peter tied up with Kraven looking right at them. So you know some stuff is about to get wild here. Now, first and foremost here, what we see is January the 31st of the month here, and we see Spider-Man swinging through the air, or so we think. It turns out that, of course, as you can see, that was the black suit, so we know it's not really Peter Parker here. And especially after we see Spider-Man fall on the ground, we definitely know for a fact that it's not our Peter Parker, right? Turns out that Richard Parker, Peter's son, is out here right now practicing being Spider-Man in the interim. Now, Richard here is still trying to make some adjustments to the fact that Peter Parker, his dad, is gone right now, and he doesn't like the fact that the suit sometimes pretends to look like Peter Parker. Really kind of freaks him out here. And this is where we find out that Peter has been missing now for almost 2 months. And Richard is just like, I would prefer if you just pretend not to be him at all. And of course, you know, the suit responds back. He's like, yeah, sure, of course, your mom said the same thing. So then Richard is like, listen, like, wait a minute here. I just thought about it. And I just thought about mom. Like, is there anything going on between y'all two? So then the suit responds back. He's like, no, like your dad was very clear about this. He gave me 3 rules if something happened to him. 1, no touching Mary Jane. 2, protect the family no matter what. And 3, once again, no touching Mary Jane. And Richard, of course, he's just ultimately worried about Peter Parker, his dad, right? So Richard asks the suit a question. He's like, listen, like, do you think that he's okay? So then the suit responds back. He's like, listen, I know that your dad's a fighter. He'll get up for whatever is knocking him down. And if it was worse than that, if he was gone, I would know that too. So Richard wants to know, he's like, how exactly would you know that? So the suit responds back. He's like, listen, I'm not sure, but I just do. So Richard's trying to figure out, is like, can you sense him? He's like, I don't really understand it per se, but yes, I can sense him. So Richard wants to know, he's like, so why don't you use that then to then find him? So the suit responds back, he's like, listen, it doesn't really work that way. I did tell him a few months ago that if he wanted, though, I could inject a trace amount of myself into his bloodstream, and that way I'd always be able to find him. And I even told him too that I could do the same for all of you, but he didn't really care for the idea of that at all. You can see like this, the suit all creepily like covering himself over Richard. It's just the Venom vibes. I love it what they're doing here with the suit. But Richard's like, listen, I bet that he'll probably change his mind, right? And ultimately, again, before we switch scenes here, we see he's like, listen, like, where are you, Dad? Just looking out and wondering where he is. Now, when we jump here to this next scene, this right here is the kingdom of the Mole Man below Staten Island. And we start off by seeing Mole Man here. He's asking Kraven, he's like, listen, how long have you had them? Speaking of Peter Parker and Harry Osborn. And he follows up by saying, listen, I ask because no one likes to be surprised at Kraven, and he will like it less than anyone. And he's talking about the Kingpin here. So Kraven responds, he's like, listen, I've had them long enough to break them down, drug them, beat them, learn their strengths, relish in their weaknesses. You and the others are simply just gonna have to endure my indiscretions. I tell you though, I anticipate this being my greatest hunt. And if you can't tell by now, as we look out here, you can see that we are in the Savage Land here, folks. But Mole Man, his thing is like, listen, do whatever it is that you want. But ultimately, what's going on right now is that you're dragging me into your schemes, making me a part of your plans. Because now you are doing your deed in my territory. and you're making the mole man complicit in whatever acts it is that you're doing. Now, Kraven's like, listen, this is like a minor sin here for such a major act. He's like, you know me by now. I'm not some recreational hunter claiming trophies on the weekend. I am a true predator, and the hunt must be pure. There must be real risk. The prey must be free, and the environment not just to my advantage. So Mole Man is like, listen, I don't think you understand what you're asking of me here, Kraven. This is not soft land. This is a savage one. And Kraven tries to ensure me, he's like, listen, I understand. I can see the creatures. They're remarkable down here. They're from a better time when the world was simple and motivations were pure. Live or die, kill or be killed. This place is truly a testing ground. It's perfection. But then Mole Man's like, yeah, but it's mine though. So I'll have to say it again. I will decide how it will be used and by whom. But then another voice pops in. It says, well, I see neither of you were paying attention to the Kingpin when he spoke, because he was very clear. What is ours is only ours at his pleasure. So the only question that matters is, do your actions please him or do they anger him? Now, the fact that Mysterio showed up down here, both of them were just like, oh, did you tell him that we were here? And, and all that. But then Mysterio just responds back. He's like, listen, don't fight. This is not on either of you. I simply come and go as I please whenever or wherever I please. You can't stop me from being here or not. But Kraven's big thing is like, listen, I hope that you're not here to try to stop me. But Mysterio's like, listen, where's the fun in that? That's not what I want at all. What I want to do is that I want to see them. And Mole Man's like, yeah, I want to see them too. So then Kraven's like, okay, let me bring you back to the surface here and I can show you where they are. So Mysterio is wondering, he's like, I assume that you've kept them sedated here. But Kraven mentions, he's like, yeah, at first I did before I got to know them. Then there were other drugs to learn their hidden secrets and their greater truths. And of course, the occasional bout of physical domination necessary in these captor/captive situations. But now I've come up with something even more effective. So Mysterio realizes that they have bomb collars with what looks like a proximity sensor. So Kraven's like, yeah, a different kind of cage for a different kind of animal. So Mole Man's trying to figure out, he's like, okay, is this like a final meal for them of sorts? And that's pretty much basically what it is, because the way that Kraven sees it, he's like, listen, this is not going to be fun here if they're starving. So yeah, I'm gonna feed them. So then Mysterio is like, all right, this is enough. How exactly are you going to do it? So Kraven responds, he's like, I won't lie. My first instinct was to be a loyal soldier. I was going to make them fight each other to the death while the six of us just looked on. But then Harry responds back, he's like, listen, we would never do that. So then Kraven agrees. He's like, especially once I learned that one of you was a physical dynamo and the other was just a weak man in a suit, which, you know, of course, like is really gonna get under Harry's skin here. So he continues on. He's like, so I dug a little bit deeper. I looked for a more profound and motivating factor. Truth serums and monogamy showed me the way. It woke the hunter in me. So then Mole Man responds. He's like, so you know who they really are. So he continues on. Kraven does. He's like, listen, I figured out who the goblin was before anyone else. The tracks were easy for a hunter of men to follow. He is Harry Osborn. If you don't know the name, I'm sure that you know the company that he owns, Oscorp. His only family member is his wife, Gwen. So of course, Harry, trying to be all tough guy, is like, listen, don't you even think about hurting her. And then Kraven's like, listen, her fate is entirely in your hands, Mr. Osborn. So then Mole Man's like, okay, well, what about the other guy? Who's this? So he responds back. He's like, this is Peter. Peter Parker with his perfect wife, Mary Jane, and his perfect children, Richard and May. Such a hard thing to hold on to, perfection. So I want to see if he can. So Mysterio doesn't really seem all too pleased, because he's like, listen, there is nothing more tedious than believing that facts about a person reveal who they truly are. So Kraven, in response, he's like, listen, I agree. That's the point of the whole hunt, to reveal the prey as they truly are. Now, Harry, of course, trying to be tough again. He's like, listen, you abducted us, you drugged us, you tortured us. We're never going to play in your stupid game. But Kraven's like, yeah, but you will though. Like, you will run and I will hunt, because if you die, so does your family. But if you can kill me, then you and your loved ones, they're safe. So Mole Man chimes in again. He's like, so are we to assume that the great Kraven the Hunter is going to hunt two of Kingpin's greatest enemies alone? So Kraven's like, yeah, the heck I will. So then Mole Man puts a little smirk on his face. He's like, okay, then you can have my jungle, but only if you entertain me. What about a wager, perhaps? And of course, all this depends on if the hunted choose to play along. So Harry's like, listen, I changed my mind here. I'll take on that deal. So Kraven's like, okay, I see you. How about that one last meal then? So Harry's like, listen, I don't really want your food. Let's get on with this whole thing, right? And then Kraven turns to Peter's like, do you have anything to say? But Peter, he's staying stoic. He's not saying anything at all. And Kraven can see that look in Peter's eyes. He's like, okay, I see you, hero. I see what you are. So why wait? So then he clicks a button. And as he clicks that button, they all start falling into the depths of the Savage Land. Once again, with that movie scream, ah! Some parachutes come out here to kind of brace them for the fall. Harry gets stuck in a tree here. And then Peter, being the hero, saves Harry from falling all the way down to the ground. Now, as they're trying to collect themselves here, their collars start going off. Beep, beep, beep. And Harry's freaking out because he's like, listen, I can't get this thing off. But then Peter just like pops it off easily, and then Harry pops it off easily as well. But then there's a voice that comes from the collar, and the voice starts laughing. So it's the voice of Kraven here. He's like, listen, this is a good joke, no? And then he talks about that sinking feeling in the pit of their stomach, how they should get used to it. But don't worry about the bombs. I will never rob myself of the pleasure of looking you into the eyes and deep into your soul before I claim my prize. Personal and close enough to smell your blood. And then he continues, he's like, but that fear of your end looming just around the corner, that is real. You have 3 hours to prepare yourselves, and then I am coming for you. Oh, and one last thing, you are in the Savage Land, and here it will not just be me who's hunting you. So please, comrades, do try to stay alive. So then Peter's like, all right, let's go. So Harry wants to know what's the plan. So Peter enlightens him. He's like, listen, when we were falling, I could see that we were pretty much going to land dead center of the jungle. I think our best plan here is to head in a straight line and find the edge, then figure out some way to the surface. But then Harry's like, wait, what about Kraven? How are we going to deal with him? So Peter responds, he's like, hopefully we can evade him and get out of here without him noticing. Because Peter's thing is like, we got to get home. And how we can't worry about anything else right now. He knows about our families. So Harry sees it differently. He's like, this is the reason why we need to try and stay here to handle it, because he doesn't have his suit. So he's the most vulnerable here. But for Peter, Peter got some powers, right? So then in that moment, Peter Parker's spider sense starts to go off. And in a matter of seconds, we see one of those bees come out. And before it could get to Harry, Peter jumps in. He grabs him by the mouth. He looks him dead in the eye. Then he gives him a 2-piece and a biscuit and knocks him out. And in that moment, Harry's like, okay, I suddenly feel a little bit better about us making it out of this jungle. And he asks him, he's like, are you okay? So then Peter responds back. He's like, I'm fine. But Harry, we ain't done, because then we start to see some more of those beasts come out. And listen, with Harry here, I'm not quite sure exactly how he's going to be able to handle all this. Now, back in the city here, we see black suit Spider-Man again. Now, I gotta say this, like the whole like black suit Spider-Man thing here, you can tell that it's not Peter Parker in the suit, right? Because you can see like the arms and the legs and how like skinnier Spider-Man is. So I just kind of like that attention to detail here. I thought it was really nice. Now, the suit and Richard here, they were just doing some petty crime or fighting some petty criminal here. But in the background, as they're swinging, we can see Felicia Hardy just watching and waiting. And when she's tired of waiting, she fires a disc, cuts off the web, and we can see Richard fall to the ground. And then she comes in swinging and says, I have some bad news for you, Spider-Man. And while Richard and a suit are trying to figure out like supervillains, and the suit's like, appear so, but then she responds and she's like, listen, I believe you knew my father, the Black Cat. Well, I'm the new one. So there's a lot to unpack in this particular issue here. We can see, of course, the Sinister Six team. What a surprise, right? They don't agree with each other. We can also see, of course, there's going to be a major problem with the fact that Kraven the Hunter has decided to hunt Kingpin's two biggest enemies without telling him. This undercurrent story here of Richard Parker now learning how to be Spider-Man. I mean, come on, this is really interesting, right? Also, the story of the child of Walter Hardy versus the child of Peter Parker. Come on. And oh yeah, how do Harry and Peter deal with the Savage Land? Oh my goodness. What did you think about it here? Would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Please leave a like on this video here for the YouTube algorithm. Also, check out our Patreon if you haven't done so already. That's another way for you here to support us on this channel so that we can continue to create good content for you. Also, subscribe if you are new to the channel. If you want to continue any of these conversations here outside of YouTube, join our Discord as well. We appreciate you watching. And as always, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye.